The strangest part wasn't the affair. It was how easily I was ready to walk away from everything. My job, my city, the apartment I'd spent 6 years turning into a home, with nothing but a duffel bag and a shattered version of myself. No fight, no screaming, just quiet resignation. I still remember standing in the elevator of my office building for the last time, watching the floors light up in reverse like I was descending into someone else's life. No one knew I was quitting. I didn't even leave a note. I just logged out, dropped my keycard at reception, and walked out into the February cold with nothing but the sound of my own thoughts. And those thoughts, they weren't angry. They were empty. That's what betrayal does to you when it doesn't come with fireworks. When it doesn't look like the movies. When it creeps in slowly, disguised as business trips, late-night calls she took on the balcony, and that shift in her eyes when she smiled but didn't really mean it. My name's Barrett, 39, software analyst. Or at least, I used to be. Her name's Eliza. For 9 years, I thought we were building something unbreakable. We fought like hell in the early days, sure, but it was passionate, real. We had inside jokes, Sunday traditions, and the kind of intimacy that felt earned, not bought. And then it just faded, like a song slowly lowering in volume, while I convinced myself it was still playing. I ignored the signs. Everyone does it first. The cold shoulder, the locked phone, the way she started showering before getting home, not after. I pretended her new friend from work was just that, a friend. Until the night I saw the notification pop up when her phone mirrored onto the TV by accident. His message lit up right there, in 4K, while we were watching some mindless show neither of us cared about. You were incredible last night. Still thinking about your hands. She didn't see my face. But in that moment, everything inside me just shut off. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand answers. I didn't scream or throw things. I waited 2 weeks, said I needed a break from work, and spent every night packing the pieces of my life into boxes. Until this morning. I was ready. Everything was loaded. Resignation sent. No plan, no future, just peace, finally. And then, right when I was about to start the car, I saw her silhouette in the rearview mirror, standing in the driveway, barefoot, holding something in her hands, trembling, crying. And then she whispered something that made me freeze in place. I didn't turn off the engine. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me to something real. Her voice had cracked on those last words. You don't know the whole truth. But the truth is, I didn't want more truth. I didn't want layers or context or reasons that might trap me in this place a little longer. I had done everything I could to prepare for the cleanest break of my life. And now, here she was, standing in the driveway like she still had the power to stop it. Eliza slowly stepped closer to the car. I watched her in the mirror, the robe she was wearing barely covering her legs, her hair messy, her eyes swollen like she hadn't slept all night. For the first time in months, she looked small, vulnerable, like the woman I used to come home to after long workdays, the one who'd curl up next to me on the couch and ask about the weird dreams I had. I should have driven away. Every fiber in me was screaming to just go, to not look back, but I rolled down the window instead. What is it, Eliza? I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then, after a long pause, she held up a sealed envelope. Her hands were shaking. Just read it, she said. Then decide. I didn't take it from her. Not yet. What is it? She didn't answer that directly. She just whispered, it's not what you think. And it never was. It would have been easier if she yelled. If she threw herself at the car or begged or apologized. But this quiet, unreadable calm, it made it worse. It made me doubt the closure I'd worked so hard to earn. I took the envelope. I didn't read it right away. I pulled into a parking lot near the edge of town, some abandoned outlet mall with weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement, and just sat there with the letter in my lap like it might burn through the dashboard if I ignored it long enough. It wasn't long. 2 pages. Handwritten. Her handwriting. Elegant, sharp, a little slanted to the right like it always had been. But the content? It knocked the air out of me. Because it wasn't just a confession. It was a timeline. It laid out the names, the messages, the photos she deleted, the places they went. And then, halfway through the second page, it took a turn I didn't expect. She never loved him. Not for a second. She wasn't sleeping with Paul out of desire. She was being blackmailed. At first, I laughed. Or maybe I scoffed. I don't know what it was. It felt too convenient, too much like a desperate story to win me back. But she included screenshots, evidence, recordings, and dates that matched up perfectly with all the times she had suddenly withdrawn from me, claimed she was sick, too tired, or needed time alone. He had something on her. Something from years ago. Something she swore wasn't even illegal, just humiliating enough to destroy her reputation. And he used it to control her. For months. I sat there in my car, reading those pages over and over, each sentence undoing a little more of my certainty, a little more of my hate. It didn't make the betrayal easier, but it made it messier. And messier meant harder to walk away from. So instead of driving north, I turned around. Back to the house I'd just left. Back to the woman who broke me. Back to a story that wasn't finished yet, no matter how much I wanted it to be. But I had no idea that what Eliza wrote in the letter wasn't even half of what I was about to discover. The house looked different the second time I pulled in that day. Not because anything had changed physically, the lights were still off in the front room. The lawn still had those weeds I kept meaning to pull. The cracked tile near the porch steps still stared up like a wound that never healed. But because I no longer saw it as my escape, I saw it as a question I didn't have the answer to. Eliza was sitting on the front steps when I returned. Still barefoot. Still in that same robe. She didn't say a word when I parked. Just looked up at me with this strange mix of hope and dread. Like she knew she had already lost me, but part of her wasn't ready to accept that. I walked past her without speaking and unlocked the front door. I didn't invite her in, but she followed anyway. Inside, everything was how I'd left it, which, ironically, meant nothing was left. The shelves were bare, drawers emptied. Even the picture frames had that faint rectangular dust shadow where memories used to live. She stood silently near the kitchen counter while I dropped the envelope on the table and faced her. "Start talking," I said. "I read your letter. I want the rest." She didn't cry. I thought she would, but she didn't. Her voice was quiet, measured. "Do you remember when my old laptop crashed 3 years ago? Right after we got back from San Diego?" I nodded. Barely. That had been a stressful month for her. Job interviews, some tension with her sister, and me being oblivious to all of it because I was buried in my own work deadlines. "Well," she said, pausing like she had to force the next words out, "I didn't tell you the truth about what caused it. It wasn't a virus. I smashed it." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She bit her lip. "Because someone hacked into my email, Nolan. Someone sent me old photos I thought were deleted forever. Photos from before we met. I was drunk, stupid, and with someone I shouldn't have trusted. He used a hidden camera. And when Paul, my boss, got access to them, he made it clear what would happen if I didn't do what he wanted." My stomach tightened. She wasn't dramatic in her telling. There was no performance in her tone, no theatrics. That almost made it worse, the calm way she unspooled this nightmare in a few flat sentences. I didn't know what to say, so I let her keep going. "He said he'd send them to the board. He'd ruin me professionally. Said no one would take me seriously in leadership with pictures like that floating around." I didn't believe him at first. Then he forwarded one of them to my personal email, attached to a draft resignation letter from our HR system. He'd hacked that too, or had someone do it. "That's when you started avoiding me," I said, remembering the night she'd come home late and pretend she was exhausted, the way she'd disappear into long showers and avoid eye contact while drying her hair. "Yes," she whispered. "I thought I could manage it. Just play along enough to protect myself and then find a way out." But he got smarter. He started using burner phones. No trace. No patterns. And when I tried to report him anonymously, he somehow found out. That's when he threatened to leak everything, including the one photo where I looked too young. She didn't finish that sentence. She didn't need to. My skin crawled. I stepped away from the table, overwhelmed by the sickening realization of what she'd been carrying alone. And then a thought hit me, one I couldn't ignore, even if I wanted to. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Why keep me in the dark? Why let me think you didn't love me anymore?" Her answer came fast. Too fast. "Because I didn't want you to see me like that." "Like what? Broken? Manipulated? Terrified?" She looked at me, eyes glassy but dry. "Because if you saw the real me, the weak, terrified version, I thought you'd leave me even faster than if you thought I was just cheating." And the crazy thing? For a moment, I believed her. But that belief didn't erase the pain. It didn't undo the months of silence, the emotional vacuum she left me in, the nights I stared at the ceiling feeling like I was living next to a ghost who used to love me. I took a deep breath. "I'm not coming back," I said quietly. I'm here for answers, Eliza. Not to pick up where we left off. Her lips trembled, but she nodded, like she'd already accepted that part. But just as I turned to leave again, she said something that froze me mid-step. Then at least let me show you what I found in Paul's apartment. That's when I realized this story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about something much darker, and I had just stepped back into its center. Paul's apartment, I repeated, turning back slowly. Eliza nodded, stepping away from the counter. After you left this morning, I knew I couldn't just wait here. I needed proof. Something undeniable. So I went to his place. My jaw clenched. You still had access? I followed him once weeks ago. Memorized the building code. I don't know why I did it. Maybe part of me knew this was all going to unravel eventually. Today he wasn't home. I stared at her, trying to figure out what I hated more. That she had broken into a man's apartment like it was nothing, or that I was actually curious about what she'd found. Eliza reached for her phone, her fingers moving fast, almost too fast, like she was afraid she'd lose her nerve if she stopped. Then she held it out to me. Look, just look at this, Barrett. I hesitated, then took it. It was a video, blurry at first, a shaky camera panning over what looked like a desk. I saw sticky notes, folders, 2 laptops, one open, the other powered off, and a tablet with what looked like a paused video of her. Eliza, sitting at a dinner table, laughing, clearly unaware she was being recorded. The date on the file? Over a year ago. From a dinner she said was with an old friend from college. Then the video panned to a drawer. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were 5 more phones, all lined up, all marked with labels, initials and dates. EJ April, MW June, KR August. I paused the video. He's done this before? She nodded. I'm not the first, and I wasn't going to be the last. He has footage on multiple women from the company, maybe beyond. I found notes, dates, patterns. He was running a whole system. Manipulation, blackmail, quiet threats. None of us knew the others were going through it. I suddenly felt sick. There was something even more disturbing about how methodical it was. Paul hadn't just blackmailed Eliza. He'd built an entire pipeline of it. Routine, cold, professional, like he was collecting pain, boxing it up, and storing it neatly like trophies. I recorded everything I could, she said. Didn't touch anything. I couldn't breathe in that place. What do you want me to do with this? I asked. Help you take him down? Go to the police? The media? I don't know, she said honestly. But I didn't want you to leave thinking I was just a liar. Or a cheat. I needed you to know what actually happened. Even if it's too late for us. Her voice cracked on those last words. And for the first time in all of this, I saw the real fracture inside her. Not just guilt or shame, but deep, paralyzing fear. The kind you carry when you know you've been trapped by something bigger than you. Something carefully designed to leave no way out. I sat down at the table, exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, and all that was left behind was confusion, grief, and a growing sense that I was far from done with this mess. Have you gone to the police yet? I asked. She shook her head. Not yet. I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. Or worse, that they'd think I consented. You know how it is. A woman sleeps with her boss. They don't ask why. They just assume she wanted something. I didn't say anything. Because sadly, she wasn't wrong. Eliza sat across from me. But I can't live with it anymore. I want to fight this. All of it. And I guess I wanted to ask you for help. Not for us. Not to fix what's already broken. Just help me bring him down. It was such a strange moment. Me, the husband she betrayed, being asked to stand by her as she exposed the man who destroyed our marriage without ever laying a finger on me. And the worst part? Some part of me wanted to. Not for her. Not even for justice. But because I couldn't stand the thought of another woman going through what she had. Still, I said nothing. Because there was one question haunting me, one I couldn't shake. If she had really wanted out, why hadn't she come to me sooner? Why wait until I quit my job, packed my life, and was halfway gone? Why now? And as I looked at her trembling, but no longer hiding, I realized I was about to get answers I wasn't sure I was ready for. The silence between us stretched for what felt like hours. Eliza sat perfectly still, staring at her own hands as though they might start shaking again if she looked away. I leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, mind spinning in too many directions. There were pieces missing, not just in the timeline she gave me, but in her behavior. I kept thinking back to all the things she'd said, or hadn't said, over the past year. And something wasn't adding up. I finally broke the silence. Why now? She looked up, startled. What? Why are you coming forward with this now? After everything. After I left. After I quit my job and walked away without a single question. Why didn't you tell me when this all started? Or when it got worse? You say it was fear, but I don't buy that. You're stronger than that. You've never let fear stop you before. Eliza's expression shifted from nervous to cornered. She opened her mouth to speak, then shut it. Then finally, in a quiet, unsteady voice, she said something that shifted everything again. Because I wasn't just afraid of him. I was afraid of what you'd think of me if you knew how long I let it happen. That hit deeper than I expected. I looked at her, trying to understand the layers buried in that sentence. She must have seen the confusion on my face, because she continued without waiting. I didn't just play along, Barrett. I made compromises. I told myself I was protecting us, but I was also protecting my reputation, my career. I should have walked away the moment he crossed the line. But I didn't. I played nice. I smiled in meetings. I accepted praise that wasn't mine. I took bonuses I knew were his way of keeping me quiet. And the longer I stayed in it, the more disgusted I became with myself. Until I couldn't face you. Not without you seeing the version of me I never wanted to become. I didn't know what to say. Because part of me understood it, that sickening spiral of guilt and fear and self-loathing, and part of me hated her for it. Not for the choices she made under pressure, but for the way she left me out of the battle entirely. For how she let me believe I was the problem while she was quietly unraveling in silence. You let me think I was the one losing you, I said, my voice flat. You let me blame myself. She nodded, eyes wet. I know. And that's what I'll never forgive myself for. I stood up, needing to move. I walked into the hallway, then into our old bedroom, bare, stripped of everything except the indents on the carpet where furniture used to sit. This was the room I once dreamed in. The room where we made plans, held each other, talked about kids we never had. And now it was just another echo chamber full of ghosts. Eliza, I called, not turning around. You said Paul isn't the only one. What did you mean by that? I heard her step closer, then stop in the doorway. I think he's working with someone else. Maybe even inside the company. That's how he got the photos in the first place. I never sent them to anyone after college. They weren't online. Someone went digging, really digging. I turned to face her. You think this goes beyond him? She nodded. There were references in his planner, initials I didn't recognize. RC cleared it. G secured the link. Things like that. It wasn't just him running this operation. And if I'm right, it's bigger than some sleazy executive blackmailing women. I felt my pulse pick up. Because if that was true, then I hadn't just quit my job out of heartbreak. I'd walked away from a company with something deeply rotten buried inside it. A company where people I trusted might have known something and stayed quiet. Do you still have those photos from his planner? I asked. I took pictures of everything I could. They're on my backup drive. Get it? She blinked, surprised. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said. But I'm not running anymore. I didn't recognize the sound of my own voice. For the first time in months, maybe years, there was weight behind it. Not anger. Not panic. Something else. Something like clarity. Eliza disappeared down the hall and returned with the hard drive. She handed it to me like she was handing off a grenade. Be careful, she whispered. You don't know who you're dealing with. I looked her in the eyes, calm but firm. Neither do they. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened every file she gave me, and what I saw in those folders would shatter everything I thought I knew about the company, my career, and the people I once trusted with my future. I didn't turn off the lights. I needed them. I needed clarity. At 2:30 in the morning, with the entire house dark except for the blue glow of my laptop, I sat in the kitchen, surrounded by silence and a growing storm of information. I had expected Eliza's files to be unsettling, maybe even damning, but I wasn't prepared for just how deep this rabbit hole went. Folder after folder, file after file, each one more disturbing than the last. Hidden audio recordings of meetings where female employees were casually discussed like inventory. Spreadsheets tracking names, dates, and payment transfers, not salaries, but something else entirely. Encrypted folders labeled with what appeared to be code names. I recognized some of the initials. A few of them were people I had worked with for years, smiled at in the break room, exchanged jokes with during dole presentations. And now, their names were on a list that looked more like a trafficking pipeline than a tech project. At one point, I had to stop and get up. My hands were shaking. I poured myself a glass of water, then dumped it down the sink without drinking. My stomach churned. What the hell had I been part of? I thought about calling someone, the police, a journalist, anyone. But I didn't even know where to start. If this really was a network operating inside the company, then blowing the whistle too early could tip someone off. I needed help. Someone smart. Someone outside the system. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions about how I got the files in the first place. And then it hit me. Travis. My old college roommate, now an independent cybersecurity consultant. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since I skipped his wedding out of sheer burnout, but he was the only person I trusted who could decode encrypted files without involving corporate lawyers or the government. He owed me a favor anyway. I once helped him get out of a major plagiarism mess before graduation. Long story. I messaged him a single line. Need eyes on something serious. You free? He replied within minutes, defined serious. I sent a screenshot. Just one. A still from one of the videos with a timestamp and the company logo visible in the corner. The typing dots showed up instantly, then vanished, then returned. Holy S asterisk asterisk. Send everything. Now. Asterisk. I compressed the folders, encrypted the archive, and sent him the password over a secure line. I watched the upload bar crawl like molasses. It was nearly 4 a.m. by the time it finished. Eliza hadn't come back downstairs. I imagined her lying awake in the guest room, or maybe not sleeping at all. I didn't blame her. What she had been through was unimaginable. But part of me still couldn't let go of the fact that it had taken losing everything for her to finally come clean. The next morning, or rather, a few hours later, Travis called. He skipped the pleasantries. This isn't just blackmail, Barrett. It's systematic targeting. There's a whole backend built into their internal tools, hidden under legitimate projects. Data is being funneled through a shell server. I'm tracing the IPs now, but whoever built this was smart. Professional grade. Possibly ex-government. My throat tightened. Can it be exposed? Yes. But not by you alone. You need someone who can protect you legally. Or better, someone who has nothing to lose. I paused. Like a journalist? Not just a journalist. Someone who's been burned before. Someone who knows how these guys work. I thought for a moment. There was one name. A woman I'd met briefly at a tech conference years ago, Miriam Yates. Former whistleblower. Her exposé on an energy firm's internal abuse scandal had taken down half a boardroom. She was blacklisted from every major outlet, but now ran her own independent platform. Travis knew her too. Reach out, he said. If anyone can get this out safely, it's her. The rest of the day was a blur. I barely ate. Barely spoke to Eliza. We passed each other like ghosts in our own home. Every time I looked at her, I felt torn in two, half of me aching for the version of her I once loved, the other still bleeding from the distance she forced between us. That night, I wrote Miriam an email. I didn't include attachments. Just a subject line and 5 lines of text. Subject: urgent, systemic corporate exploitation, evidence ready. Body: we've never worked together, but I've followed your work for years. I have something explosive and dangerous. It involves corporate blackmail, digital abuse, and multiple victims. I'm not looking for fame. Just the truth. If you're interested, reply fast. I don't know how long I'll be safe. I hovered over the send button for what felt like forever. Then I clicked it. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever I had uncovered, it was bigger than Eliza. Bigger than our marriage. And a storm was coming. Miriam replied within 4 hours. Her message was brief, direct, and loaded with urgency. I've cleared my schedule. I'll be in Portland by tomorrow evening. Do not speak to anyone else. We meet in person, only. Something about her tone told me she'd seen things like this before. Maybe worse. I printed 2 copies of everything, one for her, one for safety, and stored the backup in a locked box under the floorboard in the garage, wrapped in layers of plastic. Paranoia? Maybe. But after everything Eliza revealed, I didn't trust anyone, not my old coworkers, not the company's silence, and definitely not the systems I once helped build. That night, Eliza and I sat across from each other at the dining table, a single lamp casting soft light between us. It almost felt normal, but it wasn't. I got a reply, I told her. She looked up, lips pressed. From the journalist? I nodded. Tomorrow night. She nodded too, then hesitated. Barrett, when this is all over, what happens to us? The question lingered longer than it should have. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, this isn't about us. She looked like she wanted to say more, to argue, to cry, to rewind time. But instead, she just whispered, thank you. for not turning your back completely. I wanted to say, you turned your back on me first. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I saw something in her I hadn't seen in months. Remorse without defense. Guilt without excuses. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was too late. The next day passed in slow motion. I barely left the house. I kept my phone face down, laptop unplugged, and keys by the door, just in case I had to disappear in an instant. Around 6 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. Car outside. Black SUV. 10 minutes. Be alone. I stepped outside just as the sun dipped low, sky streaked in orange and gray. The SUV was there. Windows tinted. Engine running. I climbed in. Miriam was behind the wheel. No small talk. No handshake. She drove off in silence, eyes focused, jaw tight. When we reached her motel room, she locked the door behind us and set a noise jammer on the table. Then, she turned to me and said the words that stopped my breath cold. You don't just have evidence of abuse, Barrett. You have proof of corporate trafficking. And if I'm right, someone's already watching you. The next 48 hours moved like a storm. Miriam didn't waste time. She took copies of the files, confirmed their authenticity with her own forensic team, and had already scheduled meetings with 2 former victims Eliza had never even met. The deeper she dug, the more connections she uncovered. What began as a single act of blackmail grew into a tangled network of digital manipulation, silent coercion, and carefully masked abuse, all hidden under layers of corporate respectability. I didn't sleep much during that time. But for the first time in months, I wasn't lying awake out of heartbreak or regret. I was focused. Clear. I had a purpose again, not as someone's husband, not as a systems engineer, but as a man doing what was right, even if it came too late to save what we had. 3 days after we met, Miriam published the first part of her investigation. It hit the internet like a spark to dry grass. Within hours, it was trending across every major platform. News outlets picked it up. Whistleblowers came forward. The company issued a vague statement at first, corporate speak nonsense, but that didn't last long. By the end of the week, Paul had been arrested. So had another senior executive and 2 lower-level employees who were helping scrub evidence. The FBI opened a formal investigation. Everything Eliza had buried, everything I thought had destroyed me, it was now public, undeniable, and unraveling fast. I expected to feel triumphant, but what I felt was peace. One morning, about a week later, Eliza knocked on the garage door. She didn't come in, just stood there with 2 coffees in hand. I figured you wouldn't come back inside, she said, but I wanted to say goodbye properly this time. I nodded, took the coffee, and let the silence do what it needed to. I'm going to leave the city, she said. Start over. I need to figure out who I am without all this shadow hanging over me. I looked at her. She looked different, lighter, still broken in places, but no longer hiding it. I hope you do, I said, and I hope you forgive yourself someday. She blinked hard, then smiled, just barely. You're not going to ask me to stay? No, I said softly, but I'm glad you're walking away stronger than when you broke. She turned, walked down the driveway, and didn't look back. And I stood there, not bitter, not angry, just free. A few months later, I moved north like I originally planned. Quiet town. Mountains. Peace. I still work in tech, remotely now. Smaller company. Different values. And sometimes, when the sun hits just right, and the wind moves through the trees, I remember that night I almost drove away without looking back, and I smile. Because leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning.